We are currently in the process of dialing in the Northern Land Council, as I understand, but we will make a start, and I thank Dr Douglas and Ms Stewart for being here today in person. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. Wonderful, you're both nodding, so thank you very much. I remind senators that senators resolved an officer of a department of the Commonwealth or state shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given a reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked to the officer or to a superior officer or minister. This resolution prohibits only questions asking for opinions on matters of policy and does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policy or factual questions about how and when policies were adopted. If officers are making a claim that an answer would be contrary to public interest, it must be made by a minister and should be accompanied by a statement setting out the basis of that claim. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today?
Josephine Douglas, General Manager at the Central Land Council.
Thank you.
Georgie Stewart, the Policy Manager from the Central Land Council.
And I think we now have representatives from the Northern Land Council online.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Josephine, the CEO from the Northern Land Council.
And good afternoon, David Astalos, General Manager.
Thank you. Sorry, we just lost you at the end there.
David Astalos, General Manager, Northern Land Council.
Thank you very much. You would have potentially heard my statements earlier about opening statements, and we're running a bit behind. So if it's possible to give a very brief opening statement, if you have one, and then we can try to get to questions.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll be delivering the opening statement. I'd like to pay respects to the Ngunnawal people who are the traditional custodians of this land on which we are meeting today. We are here today representing the Central Land Council and are joined by our colleagues from the Northern Land Council. Our concerns about the bill and processes underpinning its development are shared by the Andiliaqua and Tiwi Land Councils, and this is reflected in our joint submission. While all Australians, with all Australians, we carry the weight and responsibility of this critical time in history where the protection of nature, so inextricably bound to our identity, culture and well-being, is teetering on a precipice. If we fail to get this bill right by taking another step in the wrong direction, our collective futures are bleak. In the Northern Territory, we live at the coalface of climate change now, and our trajectory, if quick and courageous decisions are not made, if quick and courageous decisions are not made now, will be harsh and likely irreversible. It is our view that with critical amendments, we can get the Environment Protection Reform Bill right. We remain positive. None of us want to be in Canberra in 5 years' time talking about why this bill failed our environment and our people. We do share a collective concern about the truncated process of public submissions and hearings under this Senate committee inquiry process, which will be wound up before the submission due date. The approach has left little room for proper review, engagement and scrutiny of complex amendments to a nationally important law. The nature, volume and complexity of materials presented through the reform process warranted early, open and constructive engagement with land councils and other First Nations representative organisations. Land councils, along with a vast array of other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representative bodies and organisations, have had just over a fortnight to review and respond to 7 bills comprising over 1,000 pages. This is in part why we are the only First Nations representatives appearing at this inquiry. This rush process is entirely inconsistent with shared decision-making and improving how governments do business with Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people under the Closing the Gap. It also diminishes the commitment to Indigenous voice so high on the government's agenda just 2 years ago. It also disregards traditional owners' millennia of custodianship and expertise and risks incomplete legislation and with adverse outcomes. We take this opportunity now to urge the federal government to delay tabling of the bill until this important inquiry has run its course, and for this committee to extend opportunities for submissions to be made within a reasonable timeframe with additional hearings in the new year, and for its recommendations to be carefully considered when finalising the bill. Our submission identifies a number of key issues that need to be addressed in the bill, and we make specific recommendations. We think they are important and achievable and include, and I'll head towards the end now, Chair, ensuring participation of Indigenous peoples in all key processes, decisions and determinations under the reformed EPBC Act, expanding the water trigger to all projects with a significant impact on ground and surface water resources, ensuring environmental integrity through better balancing ministerial discretions, transparency, devolution and the clear, certain and robust application of national environmental standards, and requiring key decisions and determinations to take account of the changing climate and related risk modelling and adaptation planning. It is imperative that the environmental reforms deliver, in closing, critical protections and gains for the environment, including species, ecologically and culturally, and significant water resources, protections and pathways or Indigenous participation embedded in the Act, requirements to consider and transparently address the views and expertise of traditional owners, as well as other experts in the community in relation to key processes and decisions, and outcomes consistent with Australia's international commitments to reduce emissions, including minimising the impacts of climate change on Indigenous people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just blanking for a moment. The Northern Land Council, do you have an opening statement or a brief one, if possible?
Chair, the opening statement that was delivered by the Central Land Council also covered our views as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll now give the call to Senator Hanson-Young.
Well, I've just seen that Senator Thorpe's come online, so
if you,
I'm happy for you to go to her first if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young, for that, and thank you, Chair. And thanks to the Land Councils. This is certainly something that we all have in common, that's protecting land and water. So my question for both the CLC and the NLC, you both have stated that the government process for these bills has provided little or no genuine engagement with our people. So can you outline precisely what consultation did or did not occur and what the government should have done to meaningfully engage First Peoples before introducing national environmental reforms of this scale?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. In regards to consultations, I can speak for the Central Land Council. We had a Teams meeting with ministerial and department staff, which we sought, and that was for an hour on Zoom. We had some provision of information 1 to 2 days before the introduction of the bill into the Parliament. We had a short meeting with Minister Murray Watt for about 15 minutes, approximately 2 weeks ago, after the introduction. So in summary, Senator, we've had very limited consultation with this, and I think it's the 4 land councils from the Northern Territory. After we issued a public statement, we have had some outreach to us, but a general feedback around this process is that it has been wanting and it hasn't been good enough.
So in your views, did you want to say something as well? CLC.
Sorry, Senator. The only addition to the CLC's experience, or rather, I just support the CLC's experience with the consultation process. We were part of that consultation or limited consultation process as well.
So, does this fulfil FPIC, free, prior and informed consent, which the government hangs their hat on and says that they do quite well?
In our view, it does not fulfil the requirements of FPIC, and the timeframes within the reform bill will not facilitate free, prior and informed consent, let alone fulfil the statutory requirements of consultation that's required.
If I might add, Senator, supporting what the Central Land Council has expressed, it does not meet the standards that are expected in terms of free, prior and informed consent. It doesn't meet the standards that are set by land councils when we try to ensure that free, prior and informed consent needs to be achieved in that informed decision-making space. It also fails the priority inform area of the Closing the Gap framework in terms of a partnership approach.
If I may, I'll add a comment as well, that the fact that we are the only Indigenous organisations present at the hearings, we are statutory entities with more resourcing perhaps than some, and there are a range of Aboriginal organisations, Indigenous organisations who have been bypassed in these processes as well. And for that reason, we would hope to see an opportunity for this inquiry to be seen through to its endpoint, and that there is an opportunity for additional hearings for those who are still in good faith making submissions to this process.
Can I just also add, Senator, we are very concerned in terms of the new streamlined assessment processes that are being proposed. We're concerned about streamlined processes, and this is a significant and concerning change from the current Act in terms of publication or public comment on streamlined assessment recommendation reports would no longer be required prior to the Minister's approval decision. So this is significant and a concerning change from the Act. For this reason, land councils do not support the proposal for undemocratic streamlined assessment processes, especially for fossil fuel projects. We want to see engagement with traditional owners on projects that affect them, their country and the environment, and it has to be genuine and it needs to be tailored to the impacts of a project and the cultural concerns of each particular group. And sometimes this engagement can take time, but once the engagement's done, there's certainty for proponents, certainty for business, and certainty for traditional owners and native title holders.
And on that point, we may need to add too that when it comes to bioregional planning, it's extremely important that traditional owners whose country may be affected are involved in the initial consultations, but that extends also to specific project recommendations. And I say that not with the intent of halting projects, it's more to do with the nature of cultural values, and an initial cultural values assessment is one thing, but specific projects, particularly large and complex industrial projects, for traditional owners to ensure the minimal harm or minimal change or impact on sites of cultural assessment or cultural value, that process needs consultation. But there are pathways for that that don't need to slow things down if there was a co-design process between traditional owners and developers to look at how that might work, the best placement of roads, the best placement of infrastructure in a development zone, then that's highly possible, but it's also really crucial that that consultation continues.
Thank you. And I agree it's shameful about free, prior and informed consent and also witnesses. I did provide a list of other witnesses and was told that there wasn't enough time. So us southern blackfellas didn't even get to the table, unfortunately. And, you know, we're still blackfellas down here. And the government, you know, chose not to hear from people this way. So just want to ask some questions around the Heritage Protection Alliance. The government says all its First Peoples engagement is happening with the First Nations Heritage Protection Alliance, which both CLC and NLC are members of. So my questions are, how often does your organisation attend meetings of the Alliance, and who from your organisation is invited to these meetings, and how often do they meet?
Thank you, Senator. The work of the Heritage Alliance is an alliance which we respect, and the Central Land Council has a representative on the alliance, and they have been attending the meetings regularly. It is really important to note, though, the work that has been done by the Heritage Alliance for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act was done prior to the release of this bill, this reform bill for the EPBC Act. In terms of the national environmental standards in relation to First Nations engagement, that NES needs to be fit for purpose for the EPBC as well as for the reformed Heritage Act. No versions of a draft standard in terms of the work of the Heritage Alliance has been signed off yet, and we have, as you say, had input into the development of that. But I make my point, I return to my point, that the work of the Heritage Alliance was specific to the Heritage Act, which was supposed to come in first. Government is now putting the EPBC Act first. It's the first piece of legislation going forward. What was done for the NES in terms of the Heritage Bill was for that, and there are new things within this reform bill that need to be consulted on. So we would like principles of engagement that this bill is widely consulted on and widely agreed to by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and peoples around Australia. Thank you.
Senator, if I might add to that, the NLC's involved. You're correct in your observation that the NLC participates in the alliance activity. We also respect the alliance's work, including the fact that the alliance was formed in response to the destruction of Juukan Gorge. As Dr. Douglas mentioned in her response, the challenge of using a piece of consultation work for a different piece of legislation in terms of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act is problematic. It seems to be trying to paper over the cracks of the deficiencies within the current reform piece of the environmental related act.
Thank you. So I've been told that the Alliance doesn't have all its members at all the meetings, and sometimes only 2 reps are talking to the Minister from the Alliance because not everyone can make it to the meetings. Is that correct?
Senator, that question would have to be put to the Alliance. I can say for the Central Land Council, our representative attends meetings regularly and has contributed to the work of the Alliance. So those questions about attendance of members is best be put to the Alliance.
So, sorry, Dr. Douglas, does that mean that your members attend every meeting?
I would have to take that question on notice in terms of attendance at every meeting, but I can say our member has attended, most of the meetings, yes. But I will take that question on notice, Senator Thorpe. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Senator, if I might add to that, the question around representation at Alliance convened meetings, whilst again that's a matter for the Alliance to respond to. From my observations, there is an internal sort of governance structure matter that those members of the Alliance that might meet with the Minister maybe select representatives from a broader representative base through the two-staged approach of the Alliance, how the Alliance operates in terms of its consultative approach to responses to policy and legislative reform, so on and so forth.
Thank you. I just have one final question, Chair. We know the government wants to streamline things so that proponents just have to talk to one group or just one person to pay them off and get signed off. And we know that, vehicles and money and jobs are offered in return for a signature to sign off on some pretty destructive industries that destroy country. This means that handling all consultation requirements with land councils and saying that meets FPIC requirements. Do you support changes that will prevent individuals outside of land councils or rep bodies from making a heritage claim? So, I belong to a couple of native title bodies down here in South, and if a family clan group says that they want to protect the Japarung trees, for example, and birthing trees, 800-year-old birthing trees, but the corporation at the board level say, oh no, we're going to do $1 million deal with the government to widen the road to save 6 minutes off the highway. Do you support the government's approach in shutting down family clan groups that have genuine concern about the destruction of their land? Do you think that they should be overridden by these changes?
Senator, land councils are statutory bodies. We have statutory functions under the Land Rights Act and under native title. We all the 4 land councils, work to a standard of free, prior and informed consent, and we would like that to be reflected in the national environmental standards, particularly around First Nations engagement. In terms of the government's approach, I'm unaware of that approach, and I would say that we have really clear processes and ways of working in the Northern Territory with traditional owners and native title holders.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Senator Hanson.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to hear from
sorry,
Mr.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Senator. Adding on to what Dr. Douglas mentioned, the situation or the circumstances are that that the Northern Land Council and the Central Land Council operate within our jurisdiction, and originating from the East Coast, being a First Nations person from Northern Australia, far north Queensland, I appreciate the fact that decision-making, particularly from a customary law point of view, changes as you move through each jurisdiction. Therefore, from our perspective as the Northern Territory Land Councils, we can only apply the frameworks here, and the frameworks will depend on the decision-making, the customary law decision-making of the traditional owner groups that we consult with.
So just a follow-up question, Chair. So I visited Borroloola and MacArthur River Mine, and I heard from family clan groups that they didn't agree with the desecration of a sacred site, but the Land Council did. So if we talk about different laws on different countries, that seems pretty similar to what goes on in this country down this way. So how do you rectify, how do you consolidate that if a family clan says, no, we don't want this river, MacArthur River Mine to happen because it's destroying a sacred serpent, and yet the Land Council says, oh, but we've done a deal, we've got an LUR, and we think it's going to be all okay because they've put a fence around it. They've diverted the river, which destroys Songline, but however, the deal's too good.
Senator, I can't speak to that particular example, but what I can say is that we have a statutory responsibility to protect sacred sites. The second point to that is it's not a Land Council's decision around what traditional owners determine on country. Our particular role is to create a space for informed decision making, and in areas like Borroloola, the traditional owner groups or the custodian groups are very much geared towards customary law decision making. Therefore, we respect what those decisions are, and we abide by those decisions in terms of how we implement those decisions, not only to protect sacred sites, but also other matters on country as well.
And just to pick up on that point, there were family clans that didn't even know about Land Council meetings. They weren't picked up by the bus to the meetings. They had no idea these decisions were being made on their behalf. So I just want to let you know that there's a whole Jukan report that articulates how those family clans were left out of free, prior and informed consent, and that, you know, this not allowing individuals to raise issues and just going through the corporate structures, I think is a real danger, and I hope the Land Councils can see that. Thank you.
Appreciated, Senator. We always take on board the feedback from countrymen as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Thank you for that. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you. I think Senator Thorpe actually asked a lot of the questions that needed to be about the level of consultation so far, and I've heard you really clearly that you feel like you haven't had enough consultation and haven't had an appropriate process. It begs belief that you had to ask for a Teams meeting with some ministerial staff when so many of these changes are going to impact directly on projects that are on your land. So I understand that frustration. And I'm also concerned of what you're saying, that actually there's numerous other First Nations communities who have been left out of this totally. So I think we need to consider that. What I did want to know is in Graham Samuel's report, he spoke clearly about the need for more engagement with Indigenous communities and making sure that there is a genuine process of consultation, that it's not just lip service. There was a draft of put forward in his report of standards for how that consultation could happen. Have you seen that? I know it was 5 years ago, but I'm interested as to whether you think that is a good basis, or whether you've got, or whether you think we would need to start again, given the government hasn't put anything forward.
I'll partly respond to that. In terms of the standard, we think that there's been a good start and that there's been good processes, but what we're keen to see in the entirety of the reform bill is a number of measures, some of which Josie's already referred to with respect to consultation and free, prior and informed consent, but also with strengthening the IAC. We feel like the IAC at the moment is a body that advises the department and advises the minister. It should have greater powers. It needs to have more teeth, and it needs to have jurisdictional representation as well as expertise. It should have the power to call on expert advice. And there's a very particular role it has in monitoring the impact of all of the standards on Australia's First Nations peoples. So that expanded functionality and role for the IAC is critically important to ensuring consultations happen well. But in terms of the Graham Samuel's work, none of that needs to start from scratch because we all have done considerable work on what good consultation looks like. But it does require, as we've said before, that the standard that's already been developed through the heritage work is put through the wash-through of this bill to see what language needs to be tightened up, particularly in the context of environmental law. Ambiguity is not a positive thing, and so we want to have strong standards and clear and strong legislation, and that applies too to consultations.
And I see that in the submission that you've called for the role of the Indigenous Advisory Council, the IAC, to be strengthened. I would imagine that actually needs to happen prior to signing off on what a First Nations consultation standard would look like.
Yes, the IAC would play a significant role in ensuring that consultation happens.
Okay, so that really is a matter of urgency, isn't it?
It's a matter of urgency, and I think one important point is we don't want to see the NES for engagement with Indigenous people lagging and delayed. When that bill is enacted, that standard, along with all the others, need to be ready. It's more that work needs to be done. It needs to be done urgently, and it needs to be done well, but it doesn't need to be a blockage to having a standard ready once the bill's enacted.
And then in terms of, just to follow on, if I may,
yeah,
Senator, then in terms of the engagement standard, looking at it from an environmental lens and certainty in terms of environmental laws, we want words like may, we find words like may and should deeply concerning. And for certainty, we want words like must and will to be used to ensure accountability and compliance. And I think that is critical to us as First Nations representatives, that the wording needs to be prescriptive and not permissive. So language is incredibly important, and looking at an engagement standard through an environmental legal lens, we want certainty. And if you have that certainty, it's certainty for all, really, in terms of best outcomes for First Nation people, for environmental, social, cultural outcomes, and for business and industry. You can get it right, and now is the time for government to get it right.
Thank you. I think they're all very good points. We are running up against the clock, but I just have one last question, if I could, Chair, and that is in relation to the changes to the water trigger in this bill. I assume you're across them, given the significant impact that may have on your communities. Could you give us a response to what the government has proposed here, which is effectively an overriding of the water trigger?
That's right. From our perspective, inland Australia is really protected by groundwater in particular, and that's at a landscape level. And at the moment, we have projects in the Northern Territory lined up to extract large quantities of water. In the case of Singleton, the largest ever extraction of water for an intensive horticulture project. So it's not a coal seam gas and it's not a fracking project, but it's an intensive horticulture project. The impacts are the same through taking the water, and in fact, across 30 years, with 40 gig per year being extracted, it will drop the water basin by 50 metres. So for groundwater-dependent ecosystems, which are inextricably bound up with cultural sites, values, streaming tracks, soakages, it's like land clearing by stealth. So from our perspective, we don't have a government at the moment that can deal with water in the way that's needed. We don't have statutory water plans. We have a territory coordinator. The powers under that Act enable step in across 32 pieces of legislation, including planning and water acts. And we have a government that's diminished the Sacred Sites Act. So for us, these decisions need to sit with the federal government, but they also need to be expanded to look at the impact of projects, not the type of projects. We support what happened in 2023 to accommodate people's fears around fracking and water use, but we think that it's sort of environmentally inconsistent to have that without it impacting on other types of projects.
So just to be clear, so I understand you, what you're saying is you're worried about the overwrite, that the water trigger could just be handed back to the territory government. But in addition, you're also saying actually it's not just fracking and gas projects that are the problem here. There is an enormous amount of water extraction that's being used for other industries.
That's right.
Massive agriculture without any consideration for the water quality or sustainability of that water supply going forward.
That's right. And as we were saying, it's crucial. The National Groundwater Strategic Framework has highlighted how increasing demand and ongoing inconsistencies in jurisdictional management and deficiencies in data are undermining best practice and putting groundwater resources at risk. And they also acknowledge that groundwater systems are critical across most of inland Australia for future drinking water, but also for sustaining many critical environmental habitats and refuge, climate refuge sites. So it's a no-brainer to us that should be consistent and it should be rational with respect to environmental protection.
I get that, and we can't trust that the Northern Territory government is going to do the right thing at all.
No, not at all. And we have also put forward some criteria that we think could be considered as threshold criteria for the sorts of projects that would be referred, which we think are sensible and achievable.
Okay, all right. Is that in your submission?
Yeah, it is.
Yep, okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon to you all. Look, I just was also concerned about the lack of consultation in relation to the bills. How would you characterise that in terms of seeing where the bills are at now? Does that reflect a complete lack of consultation, the fact that the bill, so much more work is required in the bills, do you think?
Well, there were consultations around the nature positive laws that we all participated in, and a range of groups would have participated in. But when this bill landed, we really had at most 18 days to respond and engage with that, which we've succeeded in doing as far as we can, but we are an organisation with more resources.
Well, that's not very much time given the scope of the issues that you need to deal with. And so what is your, as you look at the bills now, what further work do you believe is required to get them into an order where you feel that they can get your support?
Well, first of all, I think we need to use the time available to this committee in terms of the reporting period is March. We note that there's been 3 days of hearings made available and people in good faith have put their submissions in. But due to the truncated time frame, we would like to have more hearings and opportunities provided to groups and people around Australia so that they can also have time to review the 1,000-page reform bill across 7 bills with attached memoranda. And so that's what we would be seeking, is that the time frame be extended. And I think
there should be more hearings next year,
there should be
enabling
more.
a much broader range of Indigenous organisations to make submissions and to be heard.
Yes, correct, Senator.
So it's placed big constraints just for you to be here today, but for smaller and less resourced organisations, it's a very big barrier.
Correct, Senator.
What would you...
We should be going to the Northern Territory.
Well, we could do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we absolutely could do that. And
Not
the
before
chair's
next
looking-
week, though, Chair.
No, we can't do that. So,
What are you doing this weekend?
I mean, it is in stark contrast. It just seems extraordinary to me that we've got an inquiry into these very complex bills. We don't report until March, and the government is treating the whole process with contempt by listing the bills for consideration and we assume trying to pass them next week in the Parliament. I mean,
I want to get them through with you guys. What are you going to do?
well, let's just hope they don't
Right,
do a
the
deal.
Treasurer
Let's just
the
hope they
Treasurer
don't
wants-
do a deal with the Greens, Senator Hanson Young.
Senators, these are very fascinating conversations, but given the timing,
The Treasurer wants
So-
to
Senator
do the
Hanson
deal
Young,
with
Senator
Susan
Henderson.
Ley.
Lee.
Let me just interject
Anyway,
and say
yes,
let's
thank you
stick
very
with the
much,
questions
Chair. I have
and
the
if we're
call.
able to...
So in other words, this, excuse the little bit of hilarity on the sidelines, but in all seriousness, this is a big issue for Indigenous groups, and we did raise the consultation issues, including with Professor Samuel. And so are you aware of other organisations that haven't even had a chance to get their head around these bills?
Yes, there are. And I need to make this point in terms of the National Environmental Standard in regards to First Nation engagement. We don't want to see that. We want to see that incorporated in terms of this legislation and not kicked down the road to be dealt with later on.
In delegated legislation or the regulations?
No, in regulations. We want to see the core national environmental standards agreed on, and that they be included and written into the reform bill. And I think we should avoid mistakes of the past. This presents an opportunity to get it right and to do the necessary work to get it right. We are, willing to work to do what's necessary to provide advice. We've put in a substantial submission with recommendations in that submission, but we really need to see the in national environmental standards strengthened and to be part of this reform bill process, not delegated to regulations.
Right, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair. No further questions from me.
With that, I'd like to thank both the Northern Land Council and the Central Land Council for your evidence today and the work that's gone into the submissions. If you've taken any questions on notice, could you please provide answers to the Secretariat as soon as possible? But once again, thank you. The committee really appreciates the effort.